Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Anthony Lopez. I'm the sports editor here at the Fresno State Collegian, and today I have the prestige honor of interviewing the Utah Statesman sports editor, Dalton Renshaw. Dalton, how are you doing, man?
How's it going, everyone? I don't know if I'd say prestigious honor, but I mean, I'm happy to be on the show.
I mean, I'm gonna roll with it no matter what,
Yeah,
because
yeah, dude, I'll take it. Any kind of compliments, we'll take it. We'll take
well,
it.
I'm not really that big on like trying to reach out. This is my first time really doing this because I had my roommate and coworker Jesus Cano usually doing this. So this is my first time. I wanted to really get out there and sit down with someone to talk about the upcoming games. So,
Right on.
and this week we're going to be previewing Utah State versus Fresno State. Fresno State is currently 2-1, and Utah State is currently 0-3. Fresno State will be traveling up to Utah State this Saturday to kick off at 11:30 West Coast time, Pacific Standard Time. That would be 12:30 Mountain Time, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
You got it.
So let's get right into it. Dalton,
Sure.
a few days ago, Utah Governor Gary Herbert declared a state of emergency and issued a mandate for all residents to wear masks in the public until further notice. So how much does this affect Fresno State and Utah State this Saturday?
So it's actually affected it quite a bit because the last home game Utah State had, they had roughly 5,600 fans. And I mean, basically within hours on that next Monday, Utah State came out and said that they were going to have fans in this game. So that's the biggest effect. How it actually affects the game and the players and stuff like that, probably not a ton. It seems like both teams are still relatively clean of COVID at this point. I think both teams are mostly traveling. So it's mostly the atmosphere that's going to be weird. They were talking about they have like a weekly pregame kind of presser thing that they do, and they're talking about they're going to be pumping in crowd noise for like I think it was like up to like 75% of what would the normal the normal decibel levels would be. So that's going to be kind of weird for the players, I can imagine. But yeah, Utah's just kind of crazy right now, and I mean like California's not far off too. So it's wild times right now, man. Wild times.
It is wild times. As you as a just an individual, can you like give more insight to what Utah is experiencing right
Sure.
now with
Yeah,
COVID?
sure. Yeah, so masks are everywhere. That's definitely the biggest thing. That hasn't always been the thing over the past couple of months. We did really good in the summer of keeping the cases down, and now we're getting close to 2,500 a day, which is not great for especially a small state like Utah. And so we're on it right now, a 2-week basically quarantine where you can't be hanging out with anybody outside of your family. Really like inner circle kind of things right now. And so just traveling to campus, being on campus, basically everything's locked down. There's like we have our student media offices and everything like that. We don't have any advisors there. Pretty much nobody's there working. Everyone's working from home. So it's just we're having a big impact on it right now. But hopefully that will kind of change things around because we are going to our Thanksgiving break here in a couple weeks, and then everything's going online. So hopefully by the time that happens, things can be a little bit better, and COVID will be a little bit less rampant running through Utah.
Scary times, man. Scary times. I know here
Scary
in Fresno,
times.
we're about to go back to our purple tier because California has the 4-color tier, which
Mhm.
is the highest tier. But like I
Oof.
said, scary times. So moving on to our next topic. Right before Fresno State took the field against UNLV, we learned that Utah State parted ways with now former head coach Gary Anderson. So can you sum up the timeline to where we led up to Anderson's departure?
Yeah, so it kind of has two parts to it because I don't think a lot of people were surprised that this happened. It was mostly that this happened so early in the season. I don't think a lot of people saw that coming. Obviously, last season wasn't as good as Utah State wanted. They probably could have done better with the talent that they had, especially obviously Jordan Love at the helm. First round quarterback. They should have probably finished with better than a 7-6 record, and then starting out this season 0-3. That kind of just was the final straw. And John Hartwell's conference a couple days ago, he was talking about how this just wasn't Utah State football. He wanted to go in a different direction, and you can kind of understand that because when you start at 0-3 and pretty much the bottom of every statistic in college football, that's not the start that you want. But like I said, it was a surprise that it happened this early because, I mean, Gary Anderson, if people don't understand kind of his history with the program, he's kind of what turned this program into a decent one in the early 2010s and kind of brought this program any kind of life. And so his hiring a couple of years ago was something that people were really excited about. And so the fact that he was fired this early in the season, kind of a surprise to a lot of people. I know he kind of has a track record the past couple jobs of leaving jobs early, but people really thought he was going to be here for multiple years, and his contract said so. I think his contract was through 2023. So kind of a shock.
So then what does the future hold for Utah State now?
Yeah, so right now they are Frank Miley, who was their co-defensive coordinator coming into the season. He's stepping up as interim coach. He also stepped up a couple years ago when Matt Wells left for the last game of the season. So through the rest of the season, it looks like he'll probably be the interim coach. Hartwell said he wanted to get somebody in on a permanent basis roughly around December 15th, so kind of heading into bowl season. I don't know how reasonable that is, just with everything going on. It's going to be a tough battle, and he really wants to find the next candidate, the next kind of young coach from what it seems like. Obviously that's all speculation at this point, but like there's been names like Graham Harrell out there and guys like I'm forgetting his first name, but BYU's offensive coordinator. So they want to go in that direction. So I think trying to find that almost marquee coach is going to be tough. So it's going to be probably Frank Miley through the rest of the season.
So you mentioned Jordan Love just a minute ago, and that's actually where I'm going to segue into our next question. Cool. Anderson did coach first-round quarterback Jordan Love, and I'm curious, what has been the biggest difference between the team last year, like you said, that finished 7-6, and the team this year?
So the quarterback position obviously is a huge one, and it's not just because they lost a first-round quarterback and then trying to make that shift into whoever's next. They also lost Henry Columbia in the offseason, who was probably going to be their day one starter. I know there was some talk about competition with Jason Shelley came in, but I think a lot of people are so confident that Columbia would be the guy. He was one of Wells' favorites. He was one of Anderson's favorites. And so right now we're sitting in the position where it's Jason Shelley and Andrew Peasley are the two guys, and they've shared time throughout the season. And just neither of them are really at this point anywhere close to what Jordan Love was last season. Even though Jordan Love had a really bad season by statistical standards, through something like 17 interceptions, he was still a leader of this offense. He was still an NFL quality quarterback, and neither of the guys right now are performing at that level. And it's kind of unfortunate because it's more than just the quarterback position. It's pretty much the whole offense. The offensive line hasn't been able to give the quarterbacks time. The running backs have been good at times, but have been injured a lot of the season as well, especially Jaylen Warren. And then the receivers just aren't getting involved. So it's a huge mess. It's a big combination, but the quarterback definitely has a big part in that because neither Shelley or Peasley look confident at that position, and that's a worry when you don't have confidence at the quarterback position.
So then I have actually interesting take then, because
Sure.
we spoke with Evan Williams earlier this week, and he brought up the Utah State record, saying their record doesn't tell the whole story. So then in your eyes, do you believe this is true? And if so, what is holding this Aggies team back?
That's a really good question, because watching these first three games, I think the record definitely indicates what this team is at this point. They are really, really bad. They're, I think, second to bottom in scoring defense, second to bottom in scoring offense, somewhere around there. So, that's bad. The 0-3 is definitely what they should be. And if you saw how Romeo Dobbs just lit them up a couple weeks ago, or last week, granted, they're not good. But I think he has a point in that, there's a lot of talent. Like I mentioned, Jaylen Warren, he's a really good running back, but he's been injured a lot, didn't play last game. They have really good receivers. Devin Tompkins right now is their leading receiver, but he only has 17 catches, 122 yards. Probably should be involved more. The coaches have said that. I think Anderson in his last press conference before he got fired was saying, if we're not getting Devin Tompkins involved, then that's on us. That's our problem, because he needs to be involved in the offense, and he's just not. And then, there's senior guys like Jordan Nathan who haven't caught very many passes. So I think there's definitely talent all around this team. And you look at the defense too. I mean, guys like Shaq Bond coming in the season was supposed to be an all Mac-12, all Mountain West guy. You had guys last week like AJ Vongpachon stepping up, having 17 tackles. So there are pieces on this team to improve. I'm kind of probably in the minority thinking that they are going to be a really bad team this season. This is definitely a rebuilding year for them. So we'll kind of see. I think they can get better, but it's going to be a long process if they're going to get back to winning football games.
That's how I felt last year with Fresno State. I could really resonate with that. The team coming off a Mountain West championship, you kind of had high expectations, but then again, you lose the quarterback who took you to the Mountain West. You bring in Jorge Reyna, But you still keep most of the team there. But definitely last year for us was definitely a rebuilding year. And I personally still think it's a rebuilding year, but who knows? It's eight games. It's a sprint to the finish line. And it sucks to see Utah State start off this way. So then I want to lead into how I mentioned a little bit of Fresno State. What have you seen from this Fresno State team? What are some strengths? What are some weaknesses?
Yeah, so this Fresno State's kind of sneakily scary in my opinion because I think their defense, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think their defense isn't as good as it was in that title year. I think they've probably regressed a little bit in that department, but their offense is better. I think their offense is really good. Ronnie Rivers is still tearing it up. It's been years, man. I thought this guy was going to give it up at some point, but he's still tearing it up. He's going hard, but yeah. And then getting Jake Haener in was something I was really curious at the beginning of the season because I really liked him coming out of high school, liked him going to Washington, didn't get much time there. So ending up at Fresno State and the way he's been able to perform this season, that's like you said, having quarterbacks at Fresno State hasn't always been a luxury that they've been able to have. Starter level, all Mountain West level guys, and so having him in there. I think that's really good. Go ahead.
It's been hard. I will say it's been hard to get that like star level quarterback. Yeah. Marcus Marion definitely was that level, but he obviously didn't go to the NFL. He's doing his own thing.
And he only had it from like 1 or 2 years, right?
Yeah, and then the big one, obviously everyone knows, Raiders quarterback Derek Carr. So Fresno State definitely has had that. I think it's like kind of like the Niners. We haven't had that star quarterback. So
it's like you guys have almost had peaks and valleys. It seems like you have somebody who has a really good year and then drops off, and you have a couple of years of like still trying to find that next guy. And I think Utah State has a lot of similarities there.
I feel like that's just college football in general. Because I mean, I look at where I grew up, UC Berkeley, Cal's had, we had Jared Goff, but before that, we had no one really.
It's true.
So I mean,
it's true.
I feel like it's just an overall tell of the college football and just football in general. You're always going to have your peaks and your valleys, but
that's a good point.
Is there anything else you think you've seen from this Fresno State team? Is there anyone else like specifically that's stood out to you besides Ronnie, besides Jake?
Not specifically. I'll be honest. I haven't been able to watch as much Fresno State as I probably wish I would have. I've only gotten catch a couple of the games. I think Mims is another one. If you want me to give a specific person, I think he's played a fairly decent role the past couple seasons, and he's played really well this season. But I think they're just a solid unit overall. I think that's what's going to be the problem for Utah State is that you look overall on the offense and you look overall on the defense probably too, and there's not many positions that are seriously lacking right now.
So then that leads into my final question. Prediction for Saturday's game. We do have to deal with weather. Fresno State's playing in some extreme cold this Saturday. Fresno State's going on their second road game, and I believe this is Utah State's second or third home game?
Second, yep.
So what do you predict for Saturday's outcome?
Yeah, it's funny. You bring up weather because it's probably going to be a snowy game. And you would think that would give the advantage to Utah State, but in years past, they haven't played well in the snow or the rain. So it might be neutral fields on that. But overall, as the game goes, we kind of touched on it throughout this, or at least I have from the Utah State perspective. I think they still have a lot of building. I think that, going into the Nevada game, I predicted that they'd lose by roughly a touchdown, saw how that went. And that's kind of how things have been the past couple of games. So I'm going to say Utah State's going to be able to kind of work their way into the game, especially if Jalen Warren's there. If they can get their running game going, then they'll have a lot more options on offense, which is something that they haven't done the past couple games. But I'm honest, I think it's still going to be a Fresno State win. I think it'll be low scoring, especially with the weather. It's going to probably contribute to that. So I'm thinking probably somewhere in the 20s, probably like a 24-17 game is what I'm probably expecting. Fresno State on top, unfortunately, for Utah State fans.
Well, hopefully the pain and suffering ends soon. Hopefully. I know that pain and suffering all too well as a Niners fan. So, is there anything else you would like to add before we end, Dalton?
Yeah, no, I kind of want to get your perspective on how Fresno State's doing right now. Like, just want to ask the question of like, how do you see the game going into this? Like, do you see Utah State having any possible advantages, or do you think this is pretty much Fresno State?
I want to lean towards Fresno State because I know I have a bias just because. Um, but there are some big things that Fresno State really needs to clean up. Fresno State does not know how to contain mobile quarterbacks.
Mm.
The defense has really been struggling on that. You see it in the defensive line. I watched back the UNLV game. There's a couple missed stunts, they left too many big lanes open. So definitely defensive line needs to be able to contain, because when you run a 4-2-5 defense, you're not going to get that extra protection if you're going to have your linebackers go out and cover. So it's really, the defensive line definitely needs to, keep up. They are leading right now. They had a really good streak on sacks. Kwame Jones is playing out of his mind. David Perales is really showing up. You got Kevin Atkins being Kevin Atkins. You definitely also want, it's a really same thing probably on the offensive side. Offensive line is really struggling right now. They really are having a big time issue on pass protection. I have a little brother who's a center for Antioch High School in the Bay Area. And we were watching UNLV's game, and we saw a couple of the linemen go forward in pass protection plays. Can't be doing that. So, but it's also weird because when you look at it, Ronnie's playing out of his mind, and it's because the offensive line is actually doing the right things on the run game. So it's essentially on pass protection, you got to be able to protect Hainer. You got to be able to protect Ben, which, mind you, is still a very unique situation right now because you're seeing Hainer and Ben share time. And I had to beg the question in my takeaways earlier. Is the quarterback battle really over?
Yeah.
So you got stuff like that. But I think for Utah State, what they need to focus on is make sure you contain Rivers. Make sure that defensive line does not get to the quarterback. And I think bring pressure to Jake Hainer or Ben. That's the way. I think if you're going to do all three of those right, you get a very, very close game this Saturday. But that's just me.
Yeah. I think Utah State actually, those are a couple of things that they're decent at doing as well. Like, even as bad as the Boise State game was to open the season, I think they had 7 tackles for loss and a couple sacks. Like, they still are decent at bringing pressure. So, I mean, that's a good point. Like, if they can get pressure to Hainer or Ben, whoever's in, they're going to give themselves a chance. Unfortunately, on the flip side of that, like, stopping Ryan Rivers is going to be tough. They've been pretty much since the beginning of last season one of the worst rushing defenses in the nation. So, I think it might end up being kind of a back and forth game if each team can kind of get a good drive going. We'll see, I guess.
You also got to add in the weather. As a former football player myself, playing in the rain or snow is tough, and you're not going to be able to throw that football. So giving it to you, I will expect Utah State to give it to Ronnie, expect to give it to Jordan, expect some end arounds to Cropper or Wheatfall. You expect a lot of running.
Yeah.
And if Utah State can't contain that, like you said, how they have had a hard time containing run game, it's going to be a bad day for Utah State.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, Dalton, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day. I really appreciate it, and thank you for joining me.
Yeah, of course. Anytime.